If you watched my last video on the job market, you'll know that the real unemployment rate is over 8%, and the job market's just not looking good. It's cooling, as the economists would say, which is layman's terms for it sucks really bad. And our latest data from ADP's payrolls are not showing any signs of life. We just lost 32,000 jobs last month. And that's just part of the trend. Take a look at this chart. This is ADP's payrolls going back to January 2024. And we can see that effectively since quarter 1 this year, job creation's been flat. We've been losing or not really gaining any jobs. Any jobs we do make in the economy, we lose right away. And it's been flat for a while, which bucked a significant trend we had going into this year. What's really worrying me is the disparity between small and big companies. One of the things to note is that most Americans are employed by a small company with less than 250 employees. That's most people. We think of big names because they spend so much on advertising, they're omnipresent in our lives, but most employees work at small businesses. So keep that in mind when we're looking at the change in jobs. It's not evenly spread out. Here's November's change by corporation size. We can see that businesses under 50 employees did all of the job losses. And the job gains that were most had in the economy were done by companies with 500 plus employees, big firms. This is not a new trend. This goes back to 2023, where we're looking at the difference between the hiring in all of those kinds of firms. And what we're seeing here is that small companies have been bleeding out at an exceptional rate since Q1 of this year. It flipped like a switch, and you can see the collapse of the job market in just a few months. I've got a couple theories. The first one is that in April, we had Liberation Day, the big tariff announcement, and a lot of small businesses began to retool their organizations based on what was announced that day. Since then, nearly 500 tariff policy announcements, I can't even say that with a straight face. Nearly 500 tariff policy announcements have been made since then. This kind of uncertainty is a killer for small businesses that rely on margins that were shredded by tariffs. And so they had to retool their largest and stickiest expense: people. Yeah, a lot of small businesses are suing the government. Even Costco just hopped on this trend. But if the tariffs aren't ruled illegal and they stay, I don't see why this trend would reverse. So that's one. The second is that small businesses tend to have less cash on hand. So when borrowing costs continue to stay elevated, and April this year was around the time the Fed said, maybe we should be expecting 3% inflation instead of 2% inflation. We're going to keep rates high for longer. Remember, they were supposed to lower interest rates going into this year, but because of tariff announcements, they said they weren't sure how that inflation would shake out into the system. Because they weren't sure, they held rates steady, and a lot of businesses that were banking on cheaper financing going into 2025 didn't get it. So they cut their stickiest and largest expense: people. Large corporations have a lot of cash on hand, and they're able to continue hiring at the pace that they're hiring. But we're even seeing cracks in the large corporations to some degree. Up until the last couple months, where I think they've been hoovering up all of the jobs lost from the small businesses, that their hiring was falling too, because a lot of big businesses even decided to retool despite the fact that they don't need the cheap financing and they're not as impacted by policy uncertainty. After all, big businesses tend to have high-power lawyers that can fight the tariffs more than small businesses do. So in this last report in November, the losses are accelerating for small businesses. They're only getting worse as time is going on, despite the fact that rate cuts are now coming, and I expect us to get a rate cut on the 10th. The reason that the rates are getting cut is because of the job market. They're still worried about inflation, and they're still worried about these new policies causing prices to go up, but they also need to worry about the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate, by the way, hasn't been reported for quite a while. We didn't get October's unemployment report, and we're never going to. The BLS said that because of the shutdown, they're just not going to release that report. I think this is wrong, and they should have released a delay report, even if it was incomplete. But we do have some good guesses here. First, I want to give a shout out to Guy Berger at the Burning Glass Institute. He put together these charts on his Substack. I'll link that down in the description so you can check it out. Totally worth a read if you're a macro nerd, but I got these next couple charts from him. This is the Chicago Fed's nowcast, basically a current forecast for what unemployment would be like. And this has been a good metric to watch to follow the rate. But we can see that even then, it's still rising. We're trending up towards 4.5%. And this is the low unemployment rate. This is the doctored unemployment rate. The U6, the unemployment rate that accounts for people who have given up looking for work, as well as people who have part-time jobs but want full-time jobs. It includes people doing gig work, which oftentimes if you work just a couple hours a week, you're excluded from unemployment stats, even though you don't make enough money to really do anything with it yet. And that rate is close to 9%. And by the way, that's not even looking at young people who have a rate closer to 11%. Here are job postings on Indeed. And we can see that even though our year-over-year level is about flat, a little negative, down almost 7%, and was at 15% before, it's not looking good out there. Following my thesis about people turning to gig work instead of claiming unemployment insurance, you can see a difference start to emerge here in this chart. The amount of people searching for unemployment insurance is continuing to rise, but the people actually submitting claims are staying mostly even and are trending down, actually. I've got two theories to explain this. The first is the rise in gig work. I think more and more people are turning to gig apps and increasingly multiple gig apps where they're working more than one or they're working one full time, which disqualifies them largely from unemployment insurance. So they're looking at it, realizing that unemployment insurance doesn't pay them as much money as they need, and they're going and working on Uber or DoorDash instead. My second theory is that parents are stuck in this trap where childcare, which is very expensive, it comes with waiting lists. You can't just enroll and disenroll your child at will. You get sent to the back of the line. This means that childcare costs will likely continue through the time that a parent is unemployed. Because if they pull their kid out and then they're unemployed for a month and get a new job, they have no childcare. So they have to keep their kid in childcare, but they need money to pay for childcare and they don't have a job to get it. This is also where we would see a rise in gig work and other non-claims as people try and figure out how to make ends meet on their own. But I've got one piece of somewhat hopeful data to show us too. This is the amount of business applications being submitted compared to the hiring rate. And we can see that there's a really deeply inverse correlation between how many people are hiring and how many people are starting small businesses. But small business formation is taking off, and that could be a good thing. I don't think there's ever been a better time in history to build, given all of the cheap and accessible technological tools we have that help build businesses. I'm one of these people who started a business and work for myself. So I get it. But a rising level of entrepreneurship doesn't necessarily equate to success. Remember that these small businesses are not doing well, and interest rates are still relatively high. So borrowing right now is very costly compared to what it was years ago when the entrepreneurship rate was lower. Just having more small businesses means that there might be more failures, but it also means that more people are willing and able to take moonshots with their careers and figure out if they can work for themselves and make a go at it. This is my optimist American dream take that I hope that's really what this data is showing us, but I could be wrong. So could these trends reverse? Absolutely, but it would require fixing one or both of those things. We need policy certainty that does not cause losses and potential strife for small businesses, i.e. tariffs. And we need overall lower interest rates and cheaper borrowing. I'm not saying we're going to return to zero interest rates, but 100 basis points lower from here will still leave room to fight inflation and help the labor market and stop all these job losses. If you've made it this far, you're one of 30% of people who do. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope that you found this insightful. I know that if you've made it this far, you'll really enjoy my newsletter. Check it out below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.